The heavy, oppressive silence of the mansion's obsidian-clad hallway was broken only by the sharp, metallic clack of a weapon being loaded behind the double doors. "Please, Kalia, just stay in the supply closet," Ruthlyn whispered, her heart hammering against her ribs. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she smoothed the fabric of her daughter's oversized gray hoodie. "Mama has to finish the east wing. If they see you—" But Kalia didn't answer. She simply stared at the floor, her neatly braided hair falling over her face, her eyes vacant and heavy with a sadness no woman in her 20s should carry. Ruthlyn had been working for Seo Kang-jin for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of scrubbing bloodstains off marble floors and keeping her mouth shut about the storm-made flesh who ruled this house. Suddenly, the double doors exploded open. Seo Kang-jin stood there, a tall figure of controlled violence wrapped in a perfectly tailored black suit. Fresh cuts on his cheek stood out against his pale skin. His cold, dark eyes swept across the staff, stopping on the young woman in the hoodie. "Who," he asked, his voice terrifyingly soft, "authorized a guest?" Before Kalia could move, Kalia did the unthinkable. The 24-year-old walked straight toward the man who commanded an empire of fear and, without a word, buried her face in his shoulder, her hands clutching his expensive lapels. Ruthlyn Harris moved through the north wing, the scent of industrial bleach masking the aroma of old money. In her backpack, the weight of a lukewarm thermos felt like a lead brick. She wasn't supposed to have a passenger. 10 feet behind her, Kalia moved like a ghost. Since the incident during her final year of university, the one that had left her trembling at the mere sound of a raised voice, she hadn't spoken more than 10 words. "Just a few more hours, baby. Keep your head down." Ruthlyn was desperate. With an eviction notice on their door and no one to watch Kalia in her fragile state, she had no choice but to bring her daughter to work. "Stay in the linen closet, Kali," Ruthlyn instructed as they reached the restricted east wing. Kalia stepped into the darkness without a fight. Her daughter used to be vibrant, dreaming of dancing on stages in Hongdae. Now, she was hiding like a fugitive. Suddenly, a klaxon began to wail. Red emergency lights bathed the marble in the color of blood. A heavy steel shutter slammed down, separating Ruthlyn from the closet. "Kalia!" Ruthlyn screamed. When the study doors flew open, the storm-made flesh stepped out. And there, standing in the middle of the hallway, paralyzed by the sirens, was Kalia. She had wandered out seeking her mother and found herself face to face with the devil. Through the haze of red lights, Ruthlyn watched her daughter standing like a statue of salt, mere feet from Seo Kang-jin. 3 men in tactical gear emerged, weapons raised. To them, Kalia was an anomaly, a threat to be neutralized. "Target identified," a guard barked. Ruthlyn threw herself against the steel shutter, her fingers bleeding. "No, please, she's my daughter." Kalia took a step forward. Her movements were fluid, born of a deep-seated exhaustion that bypassed fear. She grasped Seo Kang-jin's lapels and buried her face against his chest, her body shaking with silent sobs. Seo stood frozen by the weight of the young woman who had chosen him as her sanctuary. He looked down at the braids pressed against his white shirt, and for a second, the coldness in his eyes cracked. "Stand down," he roared at his guards. He signaled the control room, and the steel barrier retracted. Ruthlyn scrambled through, throwing herself at the chairman's feet. "I'll leave. We'll go now." "You'll go nowhere," Kang-jin interrupted. "Your daughter is wounded, not in the way my men are, but wounded nonetheless." He ordered his head of security to prepare the guest suite. Prominent residence wasn't just a job, it was a sanctuary. The south wing smelled of sandalwood and old books. For the first week, Kalia remained a ghost, but the silence of the mansion was a protective quiet. By the second week, she began to wander with the grace of a cat. She found Kang Jin in the conservatory, seated at a go-board. Kalia sat on a bench 3 feet away. For nearly an hour, they sat in a shared frequency. Eventually, Kang Jin rolled up his sleeve, revealing a jagged silver scar from his wrist to his elbow, an old wound of survival. Kalia pulled back the sleeve of her hoodie, revealing the mottled bruising on her forearm from the day she had been cornered by her peers. She didn't have to explain the feeling of being hunted. Kang Jin offered a grim, silent acknowledgement. He slid a white stone across the board. Kalia placed it randomly. She realized then she wasn't learning history. She was learning that some monsters didn't want to hide under the bed. They wanted to stand guard beside it. The peace was shattered when a courier package arrived for Ruthlin. Inside was a crushed white lily soaked in something dark and unmistakable, alongside a grainy photo of Ruthlin with a red circle around her throat. The chairman's soft spot had been mapped. Kang Jin arrived like a physical tremor. "Chairman Choi of the Busan Syndicate," he muttered. "He thinks because I brought this woman and her daughter into this house, I have forgotten how to burn empires." He turned to Ruthlin. "You are under my name now. An attack on you is an attack on me." He slid an encrypted phone toward her. Ruthlin realized then that they were now the focal point of a war. The cold-blooded King of Seoul was preparing to answer in a language of fire. The inner walls of the mansion were beginning to rot with a different poison. To the soldiers, Kalia was merely the cleaner's brat. In the training courtyard, 4 men boxed her in. "The chairman is turning this place into a daycare," Minho sneered, flicking Kalia's hood back. He pushed her against a rack. "Is that how you train for a war, Minho? By attacking women?" Kang Jin's voice turned the air to ice. He stepped into the courtyard, sleeves rolled up. He gently pulled Kalia's hood back into place. "Go to your mother." With a blur of controlled violence, Kang Jin shattered Minho's pride. "This woman is not a weakness. If any of you so much as breathe in her direction without respect, I will ensure you are never seen again." The betrayal started with a flicker. The lights died. Boots thudded on stone. Kang Jin drew a suppressed handgun, moving like a vengeful spirit. He found Ruthlin in the corridor. "The library!" she sobbed. "She's trapped!" Kang Jin kicked open the library doors, neutralizing a hitman before a single round could be spent. Kalia was huddled beneath a desk. When she saw Kang Jin, she didn't recoil. "The safe room, now." They ran through a kill zone of bullets and splintering wood. At the safe room, Kang Jin shoved Ruthlin inside, but Kalia wouldn't let go of his sleeve. "Stay," she whispered. "I have to finish the fire," he said, gently unprying her fingers. The door hissed shut, sealing her behind 6 inches of reinforced steel. Entombed in the dark, after an explosion, Kang Jin felt a tug on his sleeve. Kalia sat beside him, her shoulder pressed against his suit. "Why do they hate you so much?" Kalia whispered. "I became a monster so the world couldn't make me a victim again," Kang Jin admitted. "Fear is a fortress." "It's a cage," Kalia countered. "You think you're protecting yourself, but you're sitting in the dark alone. Those people at university, they wanted me to disappear, but you stood in front of me." Kalia reached out, her hand finding his scarred hand. "If you stop being a monster, who will play Go in the garden? I don't want a chairman. I just want you." Kang Jin realized then she was offering him a way out of his own darkness. "I'll get us out," he promised. "I won't be the reason you have to hide in hoodies anymore." Kang Jin vanished into the smoke, a predator seeking the rival syndicate's lair. He walked through the main gates of the shipyard with a primal rage, born of the memory of a woman in a gray hoodie clutching his hand. He was a whirlwind of silver and lead. He reached the upper office and pinned Chairman Choi by the throat. You threatened the only people who didn't look at me and see a paycheck. They're just cleaners, Choi wheezed, because they looked at the monster and saw a man. I'm going to make sure you never look at anyone again. He did it so the air in his home wouldn't smell of blood anymore. A rare, genuine smile tugged at Kang Jin's mouth. Focus on your exams, Kalia, he said as he leaned back. Now 25, Kalia was finally finishing her degree. In the doorway, Ruthlin stood, no longer a ghost in a maid's uniform, but the estate's manager. She saw the way Kang Jin's eyes tracked Kalia with the fierce, protective pride of a guardian. Inside, the fortress had become a sanctuary. Kalia placed a white stone on the board, trapping Kang Jin's stones. She looked up, her smile bright. The trauma